Hey, good morning, Devin. How you doing today?
Morning, Justin. I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing well, my man. I know we're talking a little bit about the UFC fight last night, but nevertheless, I just want to thank you again for taking the time to be a part of this web series.
No problem. It's my pleasure, really.
Yeah, yeah. So for those of you who this is the first show you've been able to see, this is Breaking Bread. I'm your host, Justin Rufin Blanchett, and this is Deven Hurt, who is the co-founder and CEO of Prediction Strike. And Breaking Bread really is just this web series that I've been thinking about over the last 2 years as I've been going through this MBA process. Really, just finding some diverse candidates who are really doing some really dope things in their respective industries. And so when I first came up with this idea, I was actually talking to the other co-founder of Prediction Strike, Brad Chabra, who's one of your really big childhood friends, about doing this web series. And when I told him about what I was thinking about my vision, he was like, "No, man, you got to really bring in Devin." And the more and more I looked at your resume and looked at what you guys have been up to, I was like, "Okay, this makes complete total sense." So with that being said, let's kick it off.
Let's
Um,
do it.
and like I know you said you were born in ATL '96, the Olympics. It was the heyday, and then you were raised in Long Island. So I'm just curious, like, what was young Devin like? What was he into?
Sir, I guess to kind of frame this a little bit. So I was raised an only child, so it's just me and the parents in the house. And so that meant a lot of time just kind of exploring things on my own. So I used to read a lot. Now I wish I read more, but work and life. um, I got into computers early. I think we got the first computer in the house when I was 5 or 6. It was one of those big gateways. Uh, Throwback there, but um, I started playing on there, and it wasn't even just like on the computer, just scrolling games. It was like, how does this work? Like, what makes this go? That kind of thinking around it. Like, I got as I was playing computer games, it was like, oh, like it would be cool to make one. Um, so I did spend some time just building things. I don't know if you remember Bionicles, the little toys. They're like these little toy action figure type things. I built a ton of those. Yes, like a toy chest full of them. And I used to not look at the instructions to try and just see if I could figure it out. So I'd spent a lot of time, I guess, working with my hands, just trying to explore the world. Kind of, there was my parents, of course, to guide me, but didn't have that sort of that sibling dynamic that a lot of people grow up with.
Yeah, yeah, and that speaks a little bit to I think your career too, like not reading the instructions again. Yeah, and we'll get more into it, but like it totally makes sense now that you're kind of explaining it now. So like I know in our previous conversations, when I asked you about like what were you most afraid of, you said academic failure, and I know you mentioned that your mom was a teacher, I believe. So could you speak to like what brought along this fear?
Sure. I um to begin with, I don't think kids are very good at dealing with failure. It feels weird when you're young. I wasn't scared and just like afraid, like my parents were going to do something was going to happen. But it was a combination of education was highly emphasized kind of in my house growing up. It's something I wanted to pursue, wanted to be good at, and just kind of naturally as an adult, just trying to figure out, okay, how do you navigate kind of failure and that it's not always going to work. They always make fun of us as kind of the participation trophy generation, which is like kind of true, but it is this idea of what happens when it just doesn't go your way. And so for me, because I emphasize academics so much, that was kind of the thing that I felt like I had control and I could try and make sure it always went my way. And I mean, I've done very well academically, but of course, it doesn't always go your way. You're gonna have bumps along the road, bad, bad weeks, bad tests, bad months, whatever it is. One of our professors used to say, he said, sometimes you're just gonna have bad degrees, and that happens. So just get through it.
That's what's up. Did your parents go to college? Like, was that they see like what that platform could do for you, or like what was the real push for you to like get to like a high caliber school?
So my mom went to Temple, and my dad was in the Air Force. So
Hey,
military, yeah.
that's what's up.
No way, yeah. So, but there was an early emphasis on education. I think a lot of that had to do with just seeing what happens when people are highly educated, just how it can completely just change your life, change your situation. My mom worked in the city as a paralegal,
Okay.
and there she worked with people who went to kind of all the Ivy League schools. And I think that really gave her insight as to what happens when you go to these schools, what life is like coming out of it.
Right. And so there's a difference between being like really good academically and then saying like, okay, I'm going to go to Harvard. So like, at what point were you like, I got the juice, I'm Harvard caliber?
I don't know if you ever know your Harvard caliber until you get that acceptance letter. um, and even then, a lot of kids still think they are, to be honest. Uh, what really told me that I could do it and I had a solid chance was really freshman year. They sent me a recruiting letter. And it was kind of, I don't remember exactly what it said, kind of cookie cutter college recruitment, but something like, look, we've noticed you, kind of, we'd like to keep in touch, start coming to our information session, stay on the right path type thing. Uh, so that was freshman year of high school. And before that, it was just kind of just grinding, trying to get to that point. But once I saw that they noticed me kind of freshman year, it was like, okay, this is real now. This is not just kind of within my own little world. I think it can happen. There is a universe in which they think it could happen too.
Right. That's dope. That's dope. I always wondered that because I always figured like they got, I mean, you have to have some level of like, chutzpah, I guess the word is to say, okay, you know what? I think I could legitimately get into the school, and it's dope that you did. So, you go to Harvard undergrad and you major in biomedical engineering and computer science. Like, I think you alluded to a little bit in the intro, but like, what was like the driving force behind picking those as your major?
Definitely. So going into school, I actually thought I was going to med school, which
Wow.
I know we'll get to a little bit later, but that didn't happen, everyone. So I thought I wanted to be a neurosurgeon. That was kind of my goal since maybe I was 7 or 8 when I was young. It was kind of one of those things I thought I always wanted to do. I got to school, and that's really where I was able to explore just different things. In high school, we had a couple computer science classes, so I was able to take those, kind of get into it. I was like, okay, this is cool, this is cool. Then in college, I was really able to. Of course, they have the full computer science program, the full curriculum, all of it. So that's when I was really able to see, oh, like this is dope. Like I could do this. And so I love engineering. I love the idea of just building things, especially like building things for people and the human body and the human experience. So I stuck with biomedical engineering and I continued with the degree, but also I added the computer science component on there. Like just let me
I think you broke up. Was it me?
oh man, me. Hold on.
Okay.
Are we good now?
Yeah, I think we are. Hold on one second. They don't want us to shut.
There we go. Not at all. Not this morning. All right, there.
It's all good.
There we go.
Yeah.
Um,
So how about this? I'm gonna go back to the Harvard question when you said, "Do you have the juice?" And then
okay.
that way it kind of leads right into it. So hold on. Let me pull back up. My question got thrown away somewhere. Hold on. Where did you go? All right, bet. Okay. We good?
Good.
So there's a difference between like knowing you have really, really good grades and saying, okay, I think I got the juice to go to Harvard. So like what was the turning point where you were like, I think I got this?
Honestly, I don't know if you ever really think you have it until they kind of call you and tell you got in. And even then, you're still like, wow, that happened. Like, I'm here. I'm at Harvard. But the first point where it really started kind of clicking for me in my mind was freshman year of high school. They sent me a recruiting letter. It was kind of cookie cutter kind of college admissions letter, but kind of, hey, we notice you. We think you could be interesting. Start coming to our information sessions, kind of stay on the right path type thing. And no, it doesn't mean that much. Like there's probably like someone prints it out and like just mails it out. It's not a big deal. But to me, it's like, okay, they're actually noticing me. Yes, this is outside of kind of my own world of what I think is possible. And now they see it too. So that freshman year, kind of from there was when it was like, okay, we can do this. And we eventually did.
That's what's up. That's what's up. So you go to Harvard undergrad, and you major in biomedical engineering and computer science. That's like I think that's a very peculiar major for undergrad. I could be wrong. So like, what was the driving force behind that? Like, what was the yeah?
Mhm. Definitely a not very common major. I think we had computer science is a little more popular at Harvard, but biomedical engineering, I want to say like 60 kids graduate with a degree a year, like less than 100. Very, very small program. So what kind of led to that? So I actually thought I was going to med school, which I know we'll get to a little bit later, but that didn't happen. I thought I wanted to be a neurosurgeon. So, and it was one of those things. I mean, it's obviously an incredible career, uh, hu- hugely respected, all that. But when I get to college is when I actually start. I'm able to really explore things and see everything else out there.
Right.
I took a couple computer science classes in high school, but those are very foundational. In college is when you see the full course catalog of like you can do this crazy data visualization all the way to like you can build your apps to like entire operating systems, and it's like, oh wow, this is fun. And kind of like I alluded to earlier, I always liked computers. Always been kind of a cool thing for me. Just intellectually, I just think they're incredible and
Right.
what we've done. So it was like, all right, well, I still like building things. I still like building things for the human body. So let me learn about both. And that's what I did.
Can you talk a little bit too about like, from like elementary, middle, high school to Harvard? Was there any difference you're starting to see from like the level of resources that were being get thrown your way as you kind of got to these different levels in your life? Because I imagine at a certain point, like you're interested in things, and now you're being given the resources to really like dive into it and see if it really is something you want to dive into. So could you talk a little bit about those transitions?
Definitely. In elementary and middle school, things are largely foundational. Of course, you have your kind of accelerated classes, but unless you kind of want to go into academia or something kind of directly to that field, you don't really get exposed to things too
Yeah,
much.
yeah,
You get exposed to the challenge, I guess, more than anything. I think in high school, uh, my high school has a great course catalog, thankfully. And it is a public school, but they have an amazing course selection.
right.
But that's kind of when you can start kind of seeing what you're into, seeing what you like, start challenging yourself there. For me, it didn't really explode into kind of a career way until the summer after junior year of high school.
Okay.
And I highlight that because I applied to this program with MIT, and they run a bunch of different summer programs where they're essentially enrichment programs. And so this one was called Most Tech. And it was an online program, and the one I did was based on neurology.
Oh,
So learned a ton there, and that's when it was kind of like, okay, I'm learning about this specific field I want to do.
okay.
And so that was pretty much my first opportunity, and of course that was through a university. So definitely try and take advantage of those. And Most Tech was free, I'm almost certain.
Okay.
Um, so very accessible program. And then in college is when it gets crazy. That's when it's like they set you up with they set you up with 7 different academic advisors. There's mentors. There's Office of Career Services. There's a class in every little thing. Also at Harvard, if you're a student at any of the colleges, you're able to take classes at kind of every other school in the university.
Wow.
So
Yeah.
I didn't take classes at the med school or anything. I don't know if I would have even kind of fulfilled the prerequisites, but the idea is that it's there. Like you can take classes at maybe the Graduate School of Arts and Sciences if that's something you're interested in. And it's just that's when you really see all the different career paths, all of the different, I mean, especially talking to people who do that thing is so different than like every job sounds kind of good on paper. Then you talk to someone who does that thing, you're like, yeah, maybe I don't want to live my life that way. And so
Right.
I would say the big transition is when you get into college. And I think for that reason, like that's why so many people do change majors in college and things like that. Is this is when you can really see what it would be like.
Facts, facts. And you always think, oh yeah, I could do that job, and then you ask somebody what their day to day is like, and you're like,
Yep,
no, no, I'm good. Never mind, never mind.
exactly.
So I got your college resume kind of pulled up here a little bit, and it's incredible. So all right, so you interned at Google as a software engineer, I think after your freshman year,
Yes.
and I believe your junior senior year you're doing like a program manager at Microsoft.
Yep.
And around that same time, you started your own company, which was Hurt Technologies.
Yes.
So you were like the Thanos of college, like you were just collecting rings. Like what was the? I see the common theme is probably centered around like maybe cybersecurity, and it looks like some sports as well. Like what was the driving force behind this? Did you identify like a need in the market, or were you just like right place, right time? What was that about?
It was about doing cool things, doing things I thought was cool, to be honest. And I think there's so many opportunities across any field. And I was kind of just like, what interests me now? Let me see how I can kind of get into that and just ball out. And so that's what happened, to be honest. I wish I could say there was some crazy concerted plan, but there really wasn't. Kind of to weave the story in. So I worked at Google, standard software engineering job.
Okay.
Uh, what happened there was it was a great experience, great culture. But kind of for me, I'm thinking I don't want to just build product. I want to kind of be able to drive product. And
Okay.
that also kind of ties into building a startup. Like, how do I either create an idea or execute on the idea more than just kind of in the weeds coding?
Right.
So that's kind of what I was thinking as I was building that startup, the current startup. And as I was going to be a PM, it was like, okay, let's kind of take a higher perspective on this idea and execute kind of the greater vision.
Right. That's dope, man. That's dope. I mean, I was looking at it, I was like, this man is on a move, right? And so then after you graduate from college, or right around the time you graduate from college, you get this opportunity at Nike, which looks similar to like data security and data protection. I'm assuming this is because it was a cool opportunity. Also, was in the same space that you were also, similar to what you were doing in college. But can you talk a little bit about what your experience was at Nike?
Nike was great. I mean, I even taking the job was largely because I heard so much about the culture
Okay.
and just what Nike would be like. I mean, if you want to do cybersecurity at this point, you can kind of do cybersecurity anywhere. Every kind of large company has cybersecurity, and then you of course have your cybersecurity specialty companies. But for me, I was thinking, let me try and find a company that is more consumer facing because that's what I want to learn about at the time. Just what does it look like to build something for not enterprise clients or some of these tech companies, of course, their business is kind of ad slash data. So I kind of wanted to step out of that. And of course, Nike checks all those boxes. And I mean, culturally, it's amazing. It's all about sports. It's all about fun, very laid back. They have that West Coast vibe, that sports vibe. So many of the athletes are just around, either holding events or maybe just walking around. There's like a lot of gyms, like 4, 6, a lot. People,
Video, I know what it means.
yep. People go work out before work, during the day. Lunchtime is big. There's leagues, all this type of stuff. And so it's a great way to let me go learn something, learn about cybersecurity, which I had kind of surface level knowledge of. Let me go learn what it's like from a real company. Also have fun. Let me meet some cool people. Let me clearly I like sports. Just uh, based on prediction strike and other things. But it's like let me go work in sports and also work in cybersecurity. Can't beat that.
Yeah, it's a no-brainer. So that's cool. So I'm a big Jay-Z fan, and he talks a lot about the more successful he becomes, the less and less people look like him. And so I imagine at Harvard and Google and Microsoft, and I didn't mention you worked at MBA as well. At some point, you must have realized there were less and less people that look like you. So like, how did you really navigate this?
Without a doubt. And you're right. Kind of the further I've gotten kind of in my career progression from sort of elementary school all the way through, it has been kind of fewer people who look like me. Um, Best way to navigate that is kind of to go through it, to be honest. I will say I did have kind of the fortunate event of it has been a more gradual process. It has been um, kind of something that started in my elementary school, as opposed to I know a lot of people who look like us. They go to say an HBCU, and
Right.
then you go from HBCU where everyone looks like you to Microsoft. Not to bash Microsoft or any of these tech companies, but they are. I think pretty much most of the big tech companies are less than 5% Black,
Right.
and so that is, of course, a huge culture shock. Um, I didn't have kind of that experience, but at some point you do realize there's less and less people who look like you, less and less people at the top of the company who look like you. And it's not going to be easy every day. Uh, sometimes you are, sometimes you are going to wish someone could relate to different things about you and different cultural things. But in general, I will say I have not had bad experiences at companies because of that, because of how I look. I haven't had
Yeah.
something that I felt was just happening just because of that. So it is something that unfortunately a lot of us have to go through, and you can do it though. You definitely can do it.
I'm glad you were, able to persevere. That and you really worked at some really incredible companies, and I'm glad that the experiences have been fruitful for you. So that's amazing to hear. So let's talk about what you're up to now. You're the co-founder and CEO of Prediction Strike, an alternate stock market based upon professional athletes and their performance. What really sparked the creation of this, and most importantly, why were you and Brad the right people to create it?
Kind of. So you mentioned Brad earlier. So Brad has been my best friend for years, since high school. We've known each other since elementary school and kind of became increasingly better friends over that period of time.
Right.
And honestly, it was just a conversation. A random conversation led to the idea. So Brad and I worked on a couple other startups that I know we're going to get into at some point, but they kind of didn't go anywhere. And we were like, Brad and I were just talking. We're both into stocks, kind of like we both have portfolios. We trade kind of casually, nothing too crazy. And we're both into sports. So one day we're talking. It's like May, June 2018, right around graduation time. And for whatever reason, the market's going through like some sort of slight downturn. Okay. So we're like, okay, where do we want to move our money? At this point, it's also NBA playoffs. And so Brad's like, I wish I could just put my money in LeBron. And we're like, oh wait, no, that's it. That's it. That's the thing. So let's build it. And so honestly, at this point, this sounded like the least complicated startup that we're trying to tackle. So we're like, okay, we can get something up. I think we got something up by August. Yeah, definitely by August that year,
Okay.
because we started for that NFL season.
Okay. So is this like a 3 or 4 month span?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Kind of exactly brainstorming. Thankfully, we weren't in school. This is kind of the last sort of break that you have between um, before you have to do something for the real world. So yes, exactly. Talking a lot, just like, okay, what does this look like? What does this feel like? How do we do kind of the math behind it? All that sort of stuff. And
Mhm.
yep, we got something out. In the next 3-4 months, our friends started using it, and the first year was just our friends. The second year was kind of open to everyone, and we've been growing ever since.
And so I know Brad is more like on the investing side, and obviously you're on the engineering and tech side. Like, can you talk a little bit more about what the 3 or 4 months look like? Were you tapping people, asking them like, "Hey, how do I create this specific platform or app?" Or did you already have the experience, or how did you know if it was even a viable option?
I had created a couple websites before, and I learned to do it in school largely. And so those 3-4 months were a lot of just like Excel, note sheets of just like both of us just like, all right, how's this math work? Because the website itself wasn't the complicated part. I think we wanted to figure out how we can make it a viable sort of business, and how
Right.
do you kind of create this idea of a stock market without having a million people on it like the real stock, or I mean, there's way more people than that in the real stock market, but just tons and tons of people. So how do you even build that? So that was a lot of the time. And then honestly, it was like, let's just launch the thing. Let's just go. Let's just see what happens. Let's start with our friends who can give us kind of honest feedback and see if they are even into it. And from there, that's really what validated it for us. So my definite advice for anyone listening is, if you're thinking about an idea, if you're thinking about something, find the cheapest, easiest, quickest way to build it and just kind of launch it. Just see what happens.
Yeah, and I think the key too is you guys bet on yourself, but then number two, it seemed like you're just like, I'm just gonna put this thing out here. It's gonna break. We're gonna break things or break it fast, and then just keep it moving. Versus
Yep.
we'll just take time and time and time and think about making the perfect product before it comes out. And
Yes.
I've seen a few of the iterations of your product, and yeah, it's definitely come a long way. But like the only way you could have gotten to that point is if people were like, you were kicking against the can, you were throwing it, and people were giving you feedback, and you guys were able just to continue to adjust.
Definitely. I mean, that's been huge. We taken that opportunity, and I think the classic example right now is Quibi, which is a company that's what they tried to do. They tried to release the perfect product without kind of taking those incremental steps. For
Right.
us, it was like let's get something out there. It's gonna break. It still breaks sometimes, a lot less, I'll say, but it still breaks sometimes. And we just have to keep doing it, keep trucking along, keep making just incremental improvements. Like if you can just get kind of just 1% better every day, just knock off 1% of the things you have to do, all of a sudden you have a product in just a few months. Basically, you have 100% different product,
Right.
100% better product. So that's what it's all about for us.
And so originally the this opportunity was basically, okay, I want to put all my money in towards a LeBron James or whoever the player may be. What do you feel like, what does prediction strike look like in the next few years, and what do you ultimately want to head towards for this platform?
We want it to look like something that you can say that, something that you can say, I'm putting my money in LeBron for this week, this year, this game, whatever it might be, but something where we want it to feel like what the stock market feels like,
Right.
but in a more understandable way. So most people, I'd say, have kind of a surface level knowledge of the stock market. Company does well, stock goes up. Okay, cool. But there's of course a million intricacies to that. That is not a perfect rule. There's so much that goes into it to the point where it's scary for people to get involved in the stock market.
Yeah.
It doesn't make sense to a lot of people. I mean, even the financial costs, like some of the big companies, I think Google's trading at like 1,000 or something. Amazon's trading at all the money. Apple at one point was trading at like 500. Just like these companies that are household names to people are also incredibly expensive. And so people are like, especially people who are middle to kind of low income are like, well, I have $500. I don't know that that's going to go well.
Right.
So what if you could take your money and put it in something that you do understand? I mean, so many people are sports fans or have a sports fan in their life in some point. So what if you could say, look, Steph Curry, like he's my favorite athlete. So what if you could say, hey, look, I'm putting my money in Steph. Let's see what happens. Like I'm part of this guy's journey. Or what if you could say, I don't know, to your friends like, yeah, I bought that Lamar Jackson stock when he was a rookie. Now, I was there. I knew. And now he's at whatever. Like that's fun. That's a real thing.
You
So
put your money where your mouth is on that one for sure.
exactly.
I was literally there. Trust me. Look at the count.
Yep.
Well,
So
that's cool. And so, I guess the question too that I'll ask, just to kind of harp on prediction strike, is what happens in the off season? So let's say the season's done. What happens to that money that you've invested in, like a LeBron James or Lamar Jackson?
sure. So even just taking a step up, the share prices move on two ways in prediction strike. So one is in-game performance. So each player has a fantasy expectation for their next game. If they beat that expectation, it'll go up kind of proportionate to how much they beat it by. And if they miss, it'll go down proportionate to how much they miss by. So pretty simple there. The other effect is what we're calling kind of volume. And so that's other users buying and selling. So the more users buy shares of that player, price goes up. More users sell, share price goes down. So what we've seen tends to happen on the off season is there's of course no game, so there's no price movement based on performance. But there is price movement based on volume. So especially around trades, that's what really gets people. So Tom Brady this year was a big trade. DeAndre Hopkins another big trade. So you see how that also ripples to other players. So DeAndre Hopkins gets traded to the Cardinals. So now people are buying DeAndre Hopkins and Kyler Murray. People are buying Tom Brady stock, but also the Buccaneer, like Mike Evans, Chris Godwin. People are trying to see what does this look like for all the players, and selling Patriot stock. So that's that's been fun to see, a ton of fun. So we're loving that people stay engaged even in their off seasons.
That's awesome, and I appreciate you sharing that, because I'm sure that's a question people will have. Like, okay, so what happens in the off season? And now that makes total sense. It's just like Facebook acquiring Instagram or something like that. Like the trade of DeAndre Hopkins to the Cardinals, it changes not just DeAndre Hopkins, but obviously Kyler Murray to your example.
Exactly.
So this isn't the first startup that you and Brad, created. And I think like historically, creating a company with your family or your friend is like, it's a gamble. So like, why was Brad the right guy? Why was it the right gamble? And maybe you could talk a little bit about some of the startups you guys had in the past.
Sure. So the first one we built was an electronic medical record startup that was aimed at kind of small to medium practices. The problem we saw there was that these practices have this huge bloated softwares that are designed for hospitals.
Right.
So we tried to tackle that problem. Um, that is a very difficult problem we were like 20-ish for 20-year-olds to solve, just in terms of fully understanding the market, getting any sense of legitimacy. People are like, no, you're 20, you don't know anything, which is mostly true. So that one, we were definitely over our heads. Even the next one was still in the medical field. It was around the annual wellness visit, which is paid for by the US government as a way to get people getting their checkups, because the theory there is the more people get checkups kind of before things happen, you can catch it earlier. These people will be healthier. It's cheaper for the government, kind of win-win all around.
Mm-hmm.
Very similar thing, also very difficult to tackle. A lot of you would have to sell kind of office by office, which is very difficult, very time consuming, long sales cycles. So that also just kind of didn't really go anywhere. Why work with Brad? Brad has become my best friend, my brother, all of that. And so, yes, you're right, that is very risky. But I think for myself, and I'm assuming for Brad as well, it's like, rather do it with someone you trust, with someone you kind of know. We also know each other very, very well. There's a lot of times we kind of say the same things, or we message each other very similar things. We're like, we got to stop doing this. Maybe we spend too much time together. And so we do have that dynamic. And I think just the fact we've been friends for so long, we've seen each other kind of on the way up. We've seen the downs along the way. We've seen it all. And we've seen how we handle that and just kind of how we deal with that. And I will say our relationship has never been stronger. We spend more time talking to each other than ever. But it's been great. I really do love working with Brad.
That's amazing. That's dope. Because like I said, it definitely is a gamble. And meeting Brad, I can definitely see how the dynamic would flow fluidly. And so not only are you at this position with one of your best friends, but then you also go through the pandemic, which can also create some type of friction as well. But obviously it hasn't. So like, how did you guys, not just as friends, but also your company, navigate this pandemic?
Definitely. The pandemic was challenging. Just everyone's dealing with something. Was their health, family members' health, mental health, just being locked up inside. Just everyone is going through something. And I think that was the first sort of baseline understanding, even just for our working dynamic. It's like, okay, things are difficult. Can't kind of see our families, can't get out the house. This is just, you're frustrated at something already, kind of baseline. So that was just important to understand and just be very understanding of each other and just kind of what's going on. And then also just, I think on a weird professional note, there was nothing to do but sit inside and build.
Okay.
It's weird, but that's kind of what happened. So basketball season shut down like mid-March, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
So at first we're like, oh no, what's gonna happen? Then we noticed we thought everyone was gonna kind of leave the platform, which people didn't, which we were happy about. People stayed around, they're still there. And so we're like, okay, we have at least, so this is also back when we thought the pandemic was gonna last 4 weeks. So we were like, okay, we have a couple months, let's start building. So we got our designs for our new and updated website, which we're still rolling out, kind of new features for. Essentially weekly, we try and go. That so we're like, okay, let's just build. So we just kept building, start planning for the app, which is out on iOS now. Still waiting for Android approval, but a lot of just building, just stuff like that. But there was also the limbo, of course. Nobody knew how sports were coming back. shout out to Adam Silver in the NBA, did a phenomenal job with that.
Yeah.
But going into it, we didn't know. We're like, is this even going to work? Are they going to want to play? NFL, of course, said they weren't going to do a bubble. So we're like, okay, is this going to work? There have been positive tests in the NFL, but they definitely kept it rolling.
Right.
So for now and kind of to the future, it seems like sports will be back, which is all we really need for our business. We don't need fans in the stadium. We don't need kind of some of these other things that go to the sports experience.
Right. That we once thought was needed. So yeah, that is kind of cool. And if correct me if I'm wrong, but I think you guys were also raising during this time as well. And for those who are like not versed in how to raise, if you're a startup, could you talk a little bit about what that process looked like, and then also maybe a little insight into how it was during the pandemic as well?
Definitely. For in general, raising money for a startup is the most simple way I explain it to people is it's like taking out a loan. You're essentially going to someone uh, and asking for money to help build your business. Of course, it's different because the way it works is they'll say, okay, we think your business is worth this. We'll give you this other amount of money for a certain percent. And now, after that deal's kind of done, you all shake hands. Those people are now essentially on your team. They don't work for you, but they're supposed to be in your corner, helping you, assisting you um, with what you need, whether it's kind of business development, marketing type things, maybe just a sounding board, maybe introducing you to other investors. But largely it's to get money to just grow your business. So what does that actually look like kind of in practice? It looks like reaching out to a lot of venture capitalists, angel investors who tend to just be wealthy individuals, and people you know. So those are either kind of connections you have or connections of connections. And that turns into a lot of just talking to people, a lot of talking to people, presenting, explaining your idea, your vision, and why y'all are the people to build it, to blow it up.
Right.
So during the pandemic, at first, it was madness. Like when it first hit, it was like, okay, nobody's raising any money for anything. No one's investing unless you are in kind of a medical company or like a Zoom, something directly related to kind of the pandemic.
Right.
That they came out of that kind of, let me see, things got real bad in March, probably June-ish, maybe June, July, in the summer when it started to set in, okay, we're gonna be doing this for a while. That's when investors started writing checks again.
Okay.
And so I'll say the process it's been interesting. For one, it has of course been all virtual, but that's opened up the doors a lot. There was a lot of before, you would have to go meet with someone, which can be nice, but it can also be difficult depending on where you are. A lot of investors are in Silicon Valley. I was in Portland, Oregon until August when I moved back to Long Island. Brad was in Brooklyn. New York City has a better startup ecosystem, but it's just hard to physically meet someone if you're not there. Now it's all virtual. Investors are more open to that. But of course, investors want to know that your business is essentially COVID proof. So before sports came back, they were kind of like, I don't know. Are you gonna have a business? Like, is this real for the future? And honestly, the NBA surviving and thriving, and us just surviving and thriving, and we started doing better than ever once NBA came back. I think it was people were locked in their house, nothing to do but watch the games. But because of that, that gave us a lot of legitimacy, and that's honestly helped our process. And people are much more happy to talk to us now than ever.
Yeah, that's cool. And I'm sure you realized through the VC process, I don't know if I told you, but I used to do some work for Republic as well. They're investing platform out in New York.
Mhm.
And one thing I learned from them, and I guess you could talk to a little bit too, is not everything that glitters is gold. And you could be obviously, you could get money from, I'm sure, amount of people, but like you said, now these people are part of your team. Now they're in your corner, so to speak, and you don't know all their intentions, so to speak. But then also, you're also an emerging market where maybe not everybody understands your business model. So how was that navigating?
I think that last point is definitely one of the big challenges to to kind of bring in this type of product. It is consumer, but it's not something that is inherently kind of obvious to people. It's not I don't know, we're not selling kind of straight up goods. It's not a social network. It's not something that I think a lot of VCs are familiar with.
Mhm.
VCs are of course familiar with stocks. That makes sense. Not all of them are sports fans. And so even that, like we've definitely had meetings where we've gone and be like, so our interview into sports, and they're just like, okay, okay, so we're gonna back this up a step. Yeah. um, so it has been, honestly, it has been about getting our messaging down to a point that like a second grader can get it, who doesn't care about me, you, sports, anything, but someone just understands it.
Right.
And so for that, we've been really just saying people, what if you could put your money in LeBron? Like it goes back to that same idea, because if you think about it, LeBron James has become a he's his whole more than an athlete campaign. It is that he is more than an athlete. He is a cultural force. And so if you say to pretty much anyone in America, do you want to invest in LeBron James? They can make a value judgment based on that.
Right.
They kind of get, like, they might not really get kind of the platform and like how it works, but like the abstract idea they get. And
Right.
so it is bringing that to investors, selling them on that vision, and then also just backing it up with our growth, backing it up with our numbers, showing that, look, we, even if it's not the product for you, it is the product for all these people.
Right. That's awesome. And thank you for sharing that, because again, I don't know if many people who are watching this have that kind of behind the scenes look about how this whole investment thing goes. So I appreciate you sharing that. And
Most
so
definitely.
now you're at Harvard Law School, and a birdie told me it's because you want to get into politics. I don't know, but I'm really curious. Really what drove that direction.
Definitely. I was planning to go to Harvard Law School since probably junior year after I decided I'm not going to med school. Uh, and so I applied through the Harvard JDP program, JDP Junior Deferral Program.
Okay.
And so what that is, you apply during your junior year, you find out the summer after your junior year if you got in. I got in. And so conditional on the program is you have to defer for at least 2 years. They want you to get some work experience, figure out your life, figure out the world before you just kind of go to school forever.
Did you have to work in like a legal capacity, or doesn't it just get some experience?
Just get some experience. You can work in, like, one example is there's a woman who was working as a stunt double because she was like a taekwondo black belt, and she was kind of like, I'm never gonna really be able to do this as a job, but I got 2 years. Let me go have some fun.
Yeah, the life. I'm with that.
Yeah. So basically, the way I explained it is we want to make sure you're not in your parents' basement for 2 years, just waiting to go to law school. So kind of anything. That's when I went to work for Nike. And so I knew I was going back to school at some point. And what drove that was I see so many things that can be made better in our society through better applications of the law.
Yeah.
And a lot of those do wrap up into politics, they wrap up in national security, just all these things that you kind of associate with the law that has not been used to help people as it should.
Right.
And politics is definitely one of those things.
Got you. And so you have these aspirations of becoming the president of the United States, and this doesn't seem very far fetched based off of your Thanos career. Curious, like what kind of effect do you feel like you could make change with that position?
I mean, that position is a spokesperson for the world at this point. It is, they say it's leader of the free world, but the president of the United States is. That is, I mean, kind of all the clout tokens you can think of wrapped up into one. You are probably the most recognizable individual besides like who, the queen, maybe, I don't know. So, like, you're up there.
Yeah, you're up there.
So that is where you have the power to use your platform to say, this is what's wrong, this is how it should be done, and this is how we can actually help people. And something that we had talked about a little bit off air, I don't want to be a politician. I don't want to do the politicking thing. Like, that is not what it's about. It's about actually just, let's get in here, let's help some people, because so much of politics has become clearly about power brokering, about self-serving interests, about money, and money for a few people.
Right.
Whereas we forget there's a lot of people who, a lot of people that they have a responsibility for. And so we need to get back to leaders taking responsibility for everyone in their kind of district or state, but also just everyone in the country, because that's what this is about. This is supposed to be like the United States of America, right? But clearly we have fallen short of that in so many ways just since the beginning. But we can do better, and we deserve better.
Well, I'm rooting for you, my man, and everybody go
Thank you.
when you see this, go vote, go vote,
Yes.
so we can affect this change. So I'm gonna segue to the more formal part of the interview, um, and I gotta ask, what is your definition of happiness?
My definition of happiness is that you don't really have to think about it anymore. I started to see happiness as this kind of invisible thing where that hopefully is sort of the default state that you're already in a good place. And I think it becomes visible when something changes, when either you're becoming less happy and you start to think, okay, what's going on? Or even just more happy. Maybe like things are getting better. My life has never been better. People are always, I've never been happier. So, I think it is, you want to get to the point where you're not every day kind of having to check yourself and think, am I happy? You want to just be like, I am happy. You want to just know that.
Yeah, I feel you on that. It's just like a natural, like, I'm good.
Hmm.
And yeah, like you said, not having to check on yourself. And it takes some time, really does take some
Definitely.
time to get there. So my next informal question is, if you were having a dinner party and you can invite anyone you like, who could you invite and why?
So I kind of have two answers to this.
Okay.
One is my fun answer, and I think the cool answer is definitely Steph Curry. Like I mentioned, that's my favorite athlete. I think he's just the man. He does a lot. I mean, obviously balls out. Like that goes without saying. Greatest shooter ever. But also he does a lot for his community. Like he's doing a lot to get people to go out and vote. He cares about his community. He cares about the people he's with. I remember during the All-Star game in Charlotte
Mhm.
last 2 years ago, not this past one, the one before. He basically made Under Armour donate all the money that they were going to spend on his parties and give it back to the community, build a gym, build something for these kids. Like that is a great person, and he just seems like the coolest dude. Like, there's nothing funnier than there's like a video of Steph and Aisha, and they were singing like Frozen or something, and then like you you realize that's also the guy who's going to drop 40 on you the next night. There's nothing funnier than that. Oh,
Probably frozen in your ear while he's dropping.
yeah, exactly. So Steph Curry is my fun answer. Kind of my other answer is historical figure who I've just think has been just really interesting. Someone I've tried to read up about more lately is Alexander the Great.
Okay.
So
Good.
widely considered the greatest general kind of ever. Uh, and there is something associated with that sort of just like that sort of greatness that you are so single-mindedly focused, so good at what you do that I mean you can essentially take over a part of the known world before you die, like a significant part. And one of my kind of favorite sort of stories about him is they say that when one of his advisors told him that there were what they called infinite worlds, which is kind of this idea, what they essentially countries, like other lands at the time. When he finds out there's infinite worlds, he starts to cry and say, "Well, why are you crying?" He's like, "There's infinite worlds to conquer, but we're not the lords of even one." And that's of course a very militaristic thing, but if you think about that kind of in your life, there's infinite things to do. Like just pick one. Just like pick your one and become really good at that.
I hear you on that, man. I read this book on the founder of Alibaba.
Mhm.
He talked about something very similar to that. He's like, in life, if you're trying to chase all these rabbits, you'll never catch one. So in life, just focus on one rabbit, get that rabbit, and then go to the next. And I think it's very similar to what you're saying, especially
Definitely.
in life where you have so many things at your disposal. It's like just focus on one thing and be strategic about that. So I totally agree with that. My last question I got for you is, if there is what is there one music lyric or one movie line that you feel like you live by?
Definitely. So, of course, the Drake line. Drake's my favorite artist. Shout out Drake. We get a new album in January, finally.
Thank
Um,
you.
yes. So on Underground Kings, he says, "I'm the greatest. I said that before I knew I was." And that's also a Muhammad Ali reference who said basically the same thing. And the idea is it's not a cocky thing. It's like you gotta get up every day and know you are the best and kind of have that in your head and use that to attack every day because you're probably not the best. I mean, how many people are really the best at any given thing? But
Right.
if you can attack anything with that energy, with that mindset, you can get there and you can get further than you ever thought you were going to.
Yeah, especially, for yourself, you guys are working on a startup on your own. Like, there's got to be days when you're like, I don't know, why the hell am I doing this? But if you have that level of
Yes.
confidence in yourself that, like you said, 1% better every day, it's not going to be perfect. Let's just keep progressing.
Hmm.
I feel you on that. That's the only effective way to go. So
That's exactly it.
do you have any parting words?
It really goes back to kind of everything we've been saying. Just pick something. Maybe it doesn't even have to be one thing. Some things that you're interested in, and just get after it. Like it's so easy these days with I think especially with social media to kind of get trapped in what everybody else is doing and how everyone else did what they did and people telling you, oh, this is what you're supposed to be doing. There is a level of all of that that's kind of true, but at the end of the day, you gotta live your life for you. So just figure out what you like, get after it, just get 1% better at it, learn 1% more about it, and you'll be surprised. I mean, I think back to who I was as a person, who we were as a startup. At any point, it's like we've done so much, we've grown so far, and that's what everyone should just be striving for.
Yes. I thank you for that. I appreciate you saying those words. Everybody who's watching this, sign up for Prediction Strike. Try that.
Please.
Tell the guys what's good. Devin, where can we find you on Instagram?
On Instagram. So we have the Prediction Strike Instagram that exists, Prediction Strike. And then my Instagram is just under my name. So if you type in Deven, Deven, Hurt, Hurt, you can find me, request me, message me, let me know. Always reach out if anyone feels they need help or guidance or anything. Reach out. I'm on all the social media, on LinkedIn, kind of whatever it is.
I appreciate you taking the time, my man. Thank you for coming on Breaking Bread. You have a good
No
rest of your
problem. Thank you, Justin. You too.